All right, final playoff predictions video of the season. These have been very fun. Obviously, there's no reason to do it next week. We'll know who's in the playoffs and what the seeding is at that point. So thanks to everyone who's been watching these week after week. Or if this is your first, welcome. Let me explain what we're about to do here real quick. So really, I'm going to give my playoff predictions. Going to predict every game from the final week of the season. But also, this is more about playoff scenarios, playoff matchups, what each team has to do to get what seed. And we're going to go through actually each team that could move, that could have any different seeding in the final week of the season and talk about what they need to do to have things happen. So yeah, let's just get into it. Actually, before I get into it, I just wanted to mention as well, I will do some draft stuff at the end of this as well. As in, I'll talk about what each team needs to do to get the first overall pick at the end of it as well. So if that's what you're interested as well, stay on the lookout for that. I said as well like 6 times in that sentence. Let's just get into it. So these are my predictions for what's going to happen the final week of the season. I'm kind of leaning Minnesota now in that final game. But again, we'll get into the matchups and what can happen. I've been wrong a million times before. But yeah, the one team that is locked into a spot right now is the Eagles. They will be the 2 seed. That is locked. Now, almost all these teams are locked into a playoff spot to some degree. The Buccaneers are the only team that could be out of this, and we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, this is where I currently have them. The Commanders and Packers are fighting for the 6 or 7 seeds. So a lot of interesting stuff. But yeah, let's get into what each team has to have happen to get the seeding that they want to get. First, let's start off with the NFC South. There are 8 teams currently alive in the NFC. The one team on the outside looking in is the Atlanta Falcons. Here's their situation, and just the situation with actually 3 teams. The Buccaneers, the Falcons, and the Rams are all kind of tied together. So for the Buccaneers, making the playoffs is simple. If they win, they are in. If they lose, the ball is now in Atlanta's court. Atlanta has to win. If Atlanta wins and the Buccaneers lose, then Atlanta is in. So pretty simple. Atlanta needs 2 things to go their way. The Buccaneers just need one of those 2 things to go their way. And they're playing the Saints, who have not been playing good football. But again, you always have to remember, divisional matchups, weird things happen. So nothing is a guarantee in the final game of the season. The reason why I put the Rams and Seahawks here is so the Rams will know what happens in these 2 games. They play later on Sunday. If the Buccaneers win that game, they clinch the division, then the Rams would have to make sure that they win their game to get the 3 seed. Otherwise, they fall to the 4 seed. And that's a big difference, because as good as the Packers and Commanders are, the 4 seed will have to play the 5 seed. The 5 seed will be either the Lions or the Vikings. That's a matchup you want to avoid if you can. So the Rams, I think they'll look around. They'll say if the Buccaneers lose, great, we can play our backups, because then they're locked into the 3 seed. But if the Buccaneers win, they have to win to keep the 3 seed. They probably play their starters, so that's probably what happens there. As for that 5 seed, it's pretty simple here. It's just Vikings-Lions. It's going to be this Sunday night game. Loser is the 5 seed. Winner is the 1 seed. No matter what happens tonight with the Lions-49ers, I think the Lions should probably just rest their starters, because that game, it won't matter who wins or loses. It all comes down to the final game of the season, which will have the most wins between 2 opponents in NFL history. Part of that just being there's a 17-game schedule, but still, that's interesting. Winner will get the conference win and be not only get the 1 seed, but you get the bye week as well. So that's obviously so important. So it should be a fun game there. Finally, in the NFC, the race for the 6 versus 7 seed, which is something that also still matters. Much like how the Rams want to avoid the 4 seed, because then they have to play either the Vikings or the Lions. You want to avoid the 7 seed here, because if you're the 7 seed, then you have to play the Eagles, who have been very good this year, and you would like to avoid that, I think, if you could. With the Packers hard fought but ultimately losing game against the Vikings last week, what this now means is that even if they win, they might not necessarily get the 6th seed. If they win and the Commanders win, Commanders will be the 6th seed, and you get to play either the Buccaneers or the Rams. Those would be the 2 options. Falcons can't get the 3 seeds, so those would be your 2 options. That's definitely just an easier matchup than the Eagles, you would think, on paper. So who knows? Football's weird. Anything can happen, but if you can get the better seeding, you'd like to have the better seeding. So I think those two teams probably should be playing their starters as well, unless you're the Packers and just saying the Commanders will probably win anyway. Let's just rest their starters. I don't know, but that's interesting as well. If you're a Commanders fan or a Packers fan, you're definitely rooting for the 6th seed, I would assume. Moving over to the AFC. So the AFC is a lot less wide open. In fact, there are 3 division leaders that are not just locked into winning the division, but are locked into their specific spots. The Chiefs will be the 1 seed. The Bills will be the 2 seed. The Texans will be the 4 seed. And we will know who will be the 3 seed after Saturday. We'll get more on that later, but the Steelers and Ravens are both still fighting for that 3 seed as of right now. You also have the Chargers, who could be the 5 seed or the 6 seed, and then the 7 seed is wide open. And again, let's start there with the open slot in the playoffs. I still have Denver making it, but it could go south if a couple games go wrong. Actually, just if one game goes wrong for them. So these are the 3 games that matter here. You have it's the Broncos, the Dolphins, and the Bengals who are fighting for the 7 seed. Those are the only 3 teams that could end up as the 7 seed when it's all said and done. No team could fall back to the 7 seed as well. That's worth mentioning. Denver, the best they can get is the 7 seed. For Denver, it's simple. You're playing the Chiefs. The Chiefs have nothing to play for. You pull off that victory, you are in. Don't have to worry about anything. If they lose, first, that opens the door for Miami. Miami would have the tiebreaker over Cincinnati, so Miami is just rooting for a win and for a Broncos loss. The Bengals need 3 things to happen. They need to win, they need the Dolphins to lose, and they need the Broncos to lose. So they need some help. If all 3 teams lose, then Denver would be the team that gets in. So it's still worth rooting for the Bengals to lose that final game of the season. And what's interesting is, so the Bengals play Saturday night. The other 2 teams play Sunday afternoon. If the Bengals lose that Saturday night game, they're out of the playoffs. Part of me wonders if that happens, do the Chiefs then try a little harder to try and get the Broncos out of the playoffs as well and get the Dolphins in? I don't know if they're thinking that much about, I don't know if they care that much about who the 7 seed is, but hey, if the 7 seed wins a game in the playoffs, they would play the 1 seed the next round. So it matters to some degree. I don't know. Interesting stuff there. But yeah, the Bengals still need a lot to go their way. I know it's been very fun with some of this stuff. They still do need a lot to go their way, but it's possible, right? But as of right now, I think what probably happens is, if you're a Cincinnati fan, you need to just win on Saturday. And then I think if you're a Miami fan, I think you're rooting for the Bengals to lose as well, even though it doesn't actually matter you in terms of your way of getting into the playoffs. It doesn't matter for you in terms of getting into the playoffs, just because then maybe the Chiefs will try a little harder to knock the Broncos out as well, and won't have to worry about letting the Bengals in. I don't know. Finally, for the division, the NFC North is the one division in the NFC that is still available here. It's again pretty simple, and we'll actually know, like I said, we'll know after Saturday who will have the 3 seed. So the Browns play the Ravens. If the Ravens win that game, they're the 3 seed. It's locked. If the Steelers beat the Bengals and the Ravens lose to the Browns somehow, then the Steelers would get the division. Seems like a long shot because the Browns just look horrible right now. It seems like the Browns might not even be trying to win football games. So because of that, you assume the Ravens will just kind of coast. And then the Steelers Saturday night, will still have something to play for, though. So even if the Ravens clinch the division, which we expect, the Steelers would still rather have the 5 seed than the 6 seed, because the 5 seed gets you to play the Houston Texans, who have just really struggled down the stretch. The 6 seed, you play the Baltimore Ravens, which the Steelers just lost to. I don't think they would want to try that if they could avoid it. These are the 2 teams that could get either the 5 or the 6 seed. The Chargers, those are the only 2 spots they could end up in. Steelers could get the 3 seed, but if the Ravens win, those would be the only 2 spots they can end up in. If the Steelers win on Saturday night, they have clinched the 5 seed. And that's interesting to me because the Chargers play the next day. Do the Chargers rest their starters if the Steelers win? Because then the Chargers would be locked into the 6 seed. However, if the Bengals win and the Steelers lose, that means that the Chargers, it would come down to that game. If the Chargers lose to the Raiders, then they get the 6th seed. If the Chargers beat the Raiders, they could get the 5 seed, and they would then avoid playing the Ravens and play the Texans instead. So that's another interesting wrinkle in all of this. So still matters for the Chargers. Chargers want to see a Steelers loss to make sure they can get a better seed. So a lot of intrigue here. Finally, the draft stuff. So these are the 5 teams that could end up with the number 1 overall pick. As of right now, if the season ended today, it would be the Patriots, Titans, Browns, Giants, and Jaguars picking 1 through 5. These are the 5 teams that could end up as the first overall pick, after next week. So the way it works is the tiebreakers for the first overall pick are actually a lot more simple than the playoff tiebreakers. The first tiebreaker is the same head-to-head, but usually that doesn't happen, especially when there's a 4-way tie for first. So then it comes down to strength of schedule, and you see right here the strength of schedule. The Patriots have the lowest strength of schedule. They've had the easiest schedule, meaning they would get the first overall pick in this 4-way tie, and it's by enough of a margin that will not flip this final week of the season. If the Patriots lose their final game, they will have the first overall pick. The issue is who they play, and that's interesting with a couple of teams. So they play the Bills. Usually you'd think, okay, easy loss there. Let's make sure that we can, win the, get the first overall pick. The issue is the Bills have nothing to play for, and usually they play their starters for about a half and then bench them and play the rest of their guys. So could the Patriots actually win this game if we're not getting Josh Allen that much? It's possible. And what's interesting is if that happens, that the number 2 overall pick, the Titans, are in the exact same situation. They're playing the Texans, who, for one thing, Texans aren't playing that good. That could be a competitive game, period. But also, if the Texans aren't playing their starters, do the Titans then win that game as well, which could open the door for the Browns, who are going to be playing a Ravens team trying to win, trying to make sure they win the division. The Browns getting the first overall pick is not out of the question. Now, if somehow the Browns also win a game, that would open the door back up for the Giants, who, again, are in one of these situations where they're playing the Eagles, who are probably going to be, thing is, you would think they're probably going to be resting their starters, but I think they want Saquon Barkley to get that record. So if they want Saquon Barkley to get the record, they might play their starters and then still beat the Giants anyway. So while the first overall pick seems unlikely, second overall pick doesn't seem out of the question for the Giants. The Jaguars would need a lot to have go their way. They would need a Patriots, Titans, Browns, and Giants victory. They would also need the strength of schedule to flip in their favor. It's really close between them and the Patriots right now. Still technically alive for the first overall pick, but if you're a Jaguars fan, you're at least thinking, hey, can we get Eagles to get a big Saquon first quarter and then bench him, and maybe the Giants pull off that victory, and then the Titans, and Texans rest their starters, and then maybe you get the third overall pick. That's still very much in play. So a lot of interesting stuff here, because again, it's not just about the first overall pick. Getting higher still helps you. So yeah, should be an interesting, a lot of things to watch here. I think the Patriots find a way to lose. I was joking with Kyle about if you're Robert Kraft, you just, you say, hey, thanks for the season, guys. Let me take you out to dinner. Drinks are on me, on Saturday night. Try and do something like that to get them not at their best physically on Sunday. I think that might be what happens. But yeah, we'll see what happens. Those are my thoughts on all of this interesting stuff heading into the final game of the season. It's a fun season. It's a fun ending to it. Not the craziest we've seen, but still a lot of interesting stuff. So yeah, those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.